And I have my next guest. Same question. Who are you and what are you doing at JCON?
I'm Marit van Dijk. I'm a developer advocate at JetBrains, and I'm speaking here today, or rather, I spoke this morning, and my talk was called Reading Code, and it's about reading code and the importance of reading code, and also why we should practice reading code, because as developers, we spend more time reading and trying to understand existing code than we do writing code, but we hardly ever practice reading code as a skill. We spend a lot of time practicing writing code, but not reading code. And then, sometimes we need that skill more to understand existing code that we're working with. So my talk is about how can we practice reading code and using structured exercises and Code Reading Club, which was created by Feline Hermans, a professor of computer science education in the Netherlands, and a few other people. And they started doing exercises and practicing reading code, and they've shared some of their resources with people so that people can either join their online events or start their own clubs. And of course, I'm talking about how our IDE can help us when we are reading code in our IDE, from familiarizing ourselves with a project or looking at a particular section of the code and searching and navigating our code base, to getting hints from the IDE and finding out what a particular piece of code does.
So, is it the bad joke that you should write code for a psychopath who will take over your code later and will murder you if he doesn't understand it?
I really, really dislike that joke.
It's a really
because
bad
I would prefer to not have any psychopaths that work in
your code?
my team, in my code, near my code, or near me. So I would prefer to think of it as writing code as if it will be maintained by someone that you like, including your future self,
Including your future self.
assuming that you like yourself. But, hopefully we do. So assume that it will be maintained by people that you actually like, and make it easier for them to maintain your code.
And especially yourself.
Especially yourself. And I mean, we all know what it's like reading code that was written by someone else, including your past self, because you won't exactly remember what you were thinking. So,
and is it only about having a good method name, or is it making your code not complex?
it's multiple things. So I'm actually not, my talk is not about writing readable code, but it's explicitly about reading code that exists. And I think, as we have a lot of opinions on what makes good code, there are people who've written books on what makes good code. And yes, there is, but there's research on what makes good variable names, or what makes good code. And again, Feline Hermans has written a book called The Programmer's Brain, where she's also talking about, what makes good naming or good variable names, but based on research. So not opinions on it should be this, but research has shown that this works better. So I really like her book in that sense. But it's also more about, you encounter code. The code is what it is. You might write it differently now because you know more than I've literally rewritten code that I wrote myself 6 months ago, because I learned more about the language that we were working with, which was Kotlin. We used Kotlin at my previous company. So, my first Kotlin was writing Java in Kotlin. And then as we learned more Kotlin and more idiomatic Kotlin, going back to that code and then making it more idiomatic. It wasn't because I was aiming to write bad code originally, but I had learned new things, so I could apply the things that I learned to that code. And the same might be true for the domain that you're working with. As you get better understanding of the business domain, you are able to use better naming for things, or apply better logic to it, and clean out some of the bugs that might have been in your thinking and therefore might also end up in your code. So it's all of those things.
It's evolving. You as a person evolve, your knowledge evolves.
And also the ecosystem evolves. So new libraries might pop up that give you functionality that you need, or the style might change. The Java language evolves continuously, and there are new patterns that we can use to make our code, less verbose, less ceremonial, easier to read as well.
Okay.
So yeah, keeping up with everything that involves, including ourselves.
And if we talk about evolutions, we have ChatGPT, which is now there as the AI assistant, for instance, in IntelliJ. Will that help us to read code or understand code?
Yes, so I also showed some JetBrains AI assistant features that can help you to understand code. One of the things is there's obviously an option to chat with AI assistants, so you can ask questions and they can be generic, like how do I do a quick sort, or they can be specific, like how do I add a controller, and if you're in a Spring project it will suggest a Spring controller to you, or you can even ask it questions about your project. Because it's connected with the IDE and it can do callbacks to the IDE and get that information for you. It doesn't automatically load the entire project as context, but it does have some information on the abstract syntax tree of the project or the program structure interface. So what type of dependencies you're using, etc. And it uses that in the context, but it can also call back to the IDE to get more information. So that is one way that you can interact with your project through AI Assistant. We also have some AI actions that you can use in the editor, including explain code, where it will open the chat and explain the selected piece of code. You can write documentation. Sometimes that's a good way to get a quick summary of what a method does. You can use it to find problems or suggest refactoring, which can also help you. That's going more towards judging and improving the code, but it can help you understand, like, how does it work? Are there any problems in this code that I want to be aware of before I touch this code and now it's mine?
Yeah.
So
it's an extra tool. We already discussed SonarLint before, which is also, it's not AI, but it also says this is wrong with your code, or you should make this differently. So that's
this is a potential bug pattern, So I mean, obviously, IntelliJ IDEA has inspections that we've had for years and years, which will suggest things that you could change about your code to make it more robust or performant, or change the style to new Java versions. We also have a scanning tool called Codana, where you can run those same inspections, but in your CI/CD or in your CI server. So if not everybody on the team is using IntelliJ, but you want to make sure that you run the inspections, you can use Codana. And then AI Assistant is an additional tool on top of all of that you can use to interact with your code. And there are, apart from the chat and the AI actions in the editor, there are additional AI actions throughout the IDE. Obviously, being a tooling company, we're working very hard on integrating it into the IDE. So another feature that I really, really like is to explain this commit to me, because if you go to the commit history, sometimes you're working on a piece of code and you're like, why is it like this? Or, hey, I thought it was different. When was it changed? So you can go to your commit history and find that commit to see, at least the commit message, which will hopefully not only tell you what, because you can see that in the code, but also why, because you can't see that in the code. And you can look at the diff, obviously, to see what exactly was changed in the code, but you can now also ask AI Assistant, explain this commit to me, and it will give you a summary of what was changed in that commit, or if you select multiple commits, what was changed in a few commits. Yes.
Was that also in your talk?
Yes, I did show that in my talk.
So if the recording is available,
yes, please watch that and let us know what you think.
We also talked already about how a lot of companies in the Java community are based on something for free, like Sonar is giving away SonarLint for free. JetBrains is a bit doing the same, so you have this amazing IDE which is available for free.
And so we have a community edition that is open source and that is free to use, and then we have IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate, which is the professional version, which has more support for tools that you will need if you're doing professional Java development, like Spring support and lots of other things.
So isn't it amazing that a company like yours is giving away so much power for free, this IDE? Are not all developers happy with this free version?
I'm very happy with there being a free version available also, because I think it can help if you're a student. Although students can get student licenses even for free, so that would be the ultimate edition, but for free for students, so they have more functionality. I think it can be good also to have, because it's a very, very powerful tool that could be overwhelming for new beginners to programming. So I think it's also good to have a version that is maybe slightly simpler, that is free to use. So if you want to just get started and try it out, you can. Personally, I think that having a license, if you're a professional Java developer, there's so much good stuff in there. I think it's totally worth it.
It's worth it. That's
so
true. Yeah. I heard it was in another podcast, Java developers saying JetBrains makes such an amazing tool. I just want to pay for it.
I've heard that too, especially since I'm working at JetBrains. I've had friends reach out saying, "Oh my God, I love IntelliJ so much. I'm so happy to pay for it because it saves me so much trouble and toil from all of the good features. It's absolutely worth the not very high price, I think." But
indeed. By the way, I have your extra stickers that you gave me.
Thank you.
Sometimes I'm. I don't find the English word. No, never mind. You're here as a speaker. Do you also attend some sessions?
Not yet, because I wanted to make sure to prepare my talk. It has some demo parts, and I always need to refresh my memory on.
And a demo always fails in the.
I think I got lucky this time, and the demo gods were with me. And also, I've just been meeting with people and chatting with them. Because the talks I could watch on when the recordings become available, but my favorite is the hallway track and talking to people and having conversations, because that I can't do on YouTube.
Yeah.
So
and like this being in a podcast.
Yes, also added bonus.
Thanks for that. Thanks for being here.
Thanks
and
for
have
having
fun
me
at the conference.